Shalom. I am back and I am going to do a video. I wasn't going to do any more on papers, but I came across a paper that is from my class on, let's see, it's called Legal and Ethical Issues in Counseling, and I just can't pass it up, and I'm only going to read a little bit of it. It's a journal entry about codes, ethical codes, and what it is that new students are being taught as they go into the counseling profession, but not only this profession, it's the police, it's the attorneys, it's the so-called judges, it's social workers, on and on and on. These ethical codes, and I'm not against ethics at all, but what is being presented is not always ethical. And when I'm writing this paper, what I'm doing is I'm going off of a book that was titled, or is titled, Christian Counseling Ethics, a Handbook for Therapists, Pastors, and Counselors by Sanders. And it was put in place in order to teach counselors areas that we need to be aware of and be mindful of, because we are accountable for our actions. Now, when I'm writing this, I am going to be putting forth ideas and information that I received from the book. And then I'm supposed to be just talking about it and then applying it, because that's a big part of the educational system, is to make sure that you are able to apply what you have learned, and it needs to correspond with what they're teaching. So I'm going to go ahead and read this and then talk a little bit about it. It says, let's see, starting chapter 1, this is a journal entry. I said the responses to ethical codes are important to consider when beginning a counseling career. When codes are perceived to be positive in nature, their function will more serve health professionals and their clients. It seems like it would be easy to at first look at the codes with fear, because there are so many rules and regulations, but this often leads to living a sheltered life that is incapable of offering genuine care. Now this goes into statutes and codes and all of that. Okay. Now, as Sanders stated, as a result, anxious practitioners are sometimes less effective as therapists because they resist making any decision that might have the slightest chances of being questioned ethically or legally. Then I say there are going to be gray areas within counseling that will need to be addressed and decisions made to provide the best care for the clients. Over and over again in this class, I remember gray areas. There's always going to be gray areas, and you have to make the decision, and you need to make sure that you are providing the best care for your client in the midst of this, regardless of the legality issues or anything like that. But you are the one who is going to be held accountable despite this. So it was a very confusing class, and it makes more sense now why that is. So I went on to say, others will oppose, this is what the book talked about, others will oppose the ethics because the standards are constraining and alternative paths appear more optimal. Sanders says, in some cases, they carry on a passive-aggressive relationship with the ethical codes, verbally assenting to the codes while quietly disobeying them. And I say, this can be dangerous because the individual is professing one thing but doing another. When there is contradiction within a person, bitterness is often expressed unknowingly, leading to detrimental outcomes. So we could get into cognitive dissonance and the need to remove it, how we have an inner conflict going on between what we believe and then what we are doing, and what these for-profit corporations in this case are making people to do. If you want to work for them, you must follow their policies and procedures and their regulations. And if you dissent to them, then you are seen as someone who is sometimes unlawful, or you are seen as someone who is incompetent, but you are not able to work for so-called agencies who are involved in the helping profession, etc., if you aren't going to follow their rules. And I'm not against rules in all. I'm talking about oppressive rules and regulations that are impacting people negatively. And CPS is a great example of this. Also, the anti-family kangaroo courts and the prison system today. So I go on to say, still others will allow their own agendas to factor into the way they perceive ethical codes. People who are said to hold this view oppose a code of ethics by openly defying the rules. These individuals feel restrained by the codes and seek a means that satisfies their own needs. The path these individuals take is self-serving and works outside the guidelines of the ethical codes. And then I say this approach is not as common because professionals are normally cognizant of the codes and the repercussions that result from breaching them. Interesting. There's always going to be consequences when you breach codes, and there is a time when you have to decide what it is that you're going to be willing to do, and to look at what are the repercussions if you do them or if you don't do them, and how are you helping others. Are you helping families in CPS, in social work, in counseling, when you contract and when you are forcing services and when you are not providing a place where parents can have due process of law in a true court of record before a jury of one's peers, not the due process that these training systems are talking about, because they like to say, oh, you get to go to court and parents get to have a voice there and be heard. No, that's not due process. So you really do have to know what it is that you are getting yourself into and understand this. Now, I go on to say, responding to professional codes of ethics from each of these stances has negative effects on those involved, as well as the profession as a whole. All right, so you're going to be going against the whole profession if you're not following these ethical codes and these statutes and all the regulations and policies, despite what you see going on around you. Now, some openly display discontent when confronted with the codes, while others more subtly display opposition. Either way, the outcome is negative. The code's purpose are to maintain some form of order. Without order and rules to guide behavior, discrimination of various forms and other negative behaviors will be free to roam. To minimize the problems related to seeing the code in a negative light, it is optimal to have what Sanders calls a healthy respect for them. She says, these practitioners allow the code to guide and challenge them as they do their daily work, yet they don't defy the code. Such people recognize that there are gray areas that do not always fit the rules well, and that part of behaving ethically is learning how to be ethical even when the rules do not apply, or how to be ethical even when the rules do not apply or are contradictory. And then I say, this is the best way to approach ethical codes because it demonstrates an application for their purpose and their importance in conducting a professional relationship that strives to provide the best services to clients with the least possible harmful side effects. Okay, I have to do this, pat myself on the back. Good job. I regurgitated all of that and spit it out and put it on paper. Truly, as people who are invested with their energy, their money, their time, and everything into these institution programs And there is so much, how would you call it, pressure to just follow what is being said, because you're not going to graduate, you're not going to land a job if you do not comply with what the system has in place. Now, people who are wanting to challenge the system or these policies and procedures and regulations, they have to work at the grassroots level. And they have to raise their voice, and they're continually being bombarded with all kinds of negative put downs and media coverage and all of that is not helpful. It is dishonest. It is biased. And it is not in the best interest of the people and children, families, and our communities. What is being said by all these people, okay? But the people who are speaking out, the whistleblowers, those who are sharing their testimonies, those who are seeing the results of these crimes against families, those people are not supported at all. And they need to have a voice. They need to have a platform and a place in which they can be heard. They need people to begin to see what is going on. And this is a for-profit corporation, and it is a corrupt system in place. And all of this indoctrination, all it's doing is breaking down the family unit and destroying one family at a time, one child at a time. So it is time to really look at each of our roles and the parts that we are going to play, and to decide whose side we're on. Are we on the side of people who truly care about family and children? Are we on the side of the system who has unlawful statutes and codes, policies and regulations that are incentive driven, who are not providing justice to families, who are working under the color of law? Are we going to listen to them and continue to support them and be involved in partnering with them in various types of organizations, whether it be adoption agencies, churches coming together, whether it be training programs, whether it be contracting together with them? I know that even the doctors and the hospitals, the military, the police, all of these different corporations and people are being recruited in to this multidisciplinary team, which on the outside sounds good, what is being presented for the safety and protection of, in the best interest of, no child left behind, all of these things. Let's help children to have healthy homes and to not be stuck in foster care, for languishing in these foster care. Let's give them new families, these abused and neglected children. That's what's being said in order to pull at the heartstrings of people who do not understand that this is a criminal cartel of human trafficking, of countless children and parents, in the form of services, in the form of adoptions, in the form of termination papers, and in the form of child support payments. The money that's being exchanged between the state, taxpayers, and parents who have lost their loved, beloved children. And they're having to pay for child support. They're having to pay for pharmaceuticals that they don't want their children to have, psychotropic drugs, because their children are hurting because they want to be with their families, not because they were abused or neglected by their parents. Parents who are having to pay to have any type of contact with their children, having to be supervised by the extortioners who took away their parental rights unlawfully. Being made to pay for services like anger management, being diagnosed with depression and having it be used against you because you are sad, because your children have been kidnapped from you and no one is listening. Being angry because people are oppressing you and you have no voice within the system. I'm not saying you don't have a voice that you can use, but the people within the system do not hear it. And they diagnose you with having some type of an anger problem. All of this is being done in order to support the current system in place. They are not going to police themselves. They're not going to counsel themselves. They're not going to judge themselves. It's up to families to hold these people accountable, to expose their wicked deeds, their unlawful, treasonous acts, and to say no more. So I thank you for just sticking in there. I don't want to drag it on. In the last video, I kind of continued to go on, and I don't want to just keep people watching videos and feeling like nothing's being said. But I thought that this was important because we all need to see that crimes are being created using unlawful legislation to do so by unelected bureaucrats. And it is time to say, I'm not going to stand for this anymore. You need to stop passing tens of thousands of new statutes and codes that are ending up violating people left and right, while the professional criminals continue to roam free and to enact terrorism on families within this nation and around the world. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. And thank you for sharing the information. Research and just help other people. Be there. Be a support system for the truth. Thank you. Shalom.